Alright, rock and roll.
So, this battle began over there somewhere by the river of Morvik, I think it's called. And the French began to kind of kick the Russians' butt, so they retreated, the green ones are the Russians. They fell back to the nearby town of Borodino, and they built a hasty kind of fortification, which is called a redoubt. And the French are the yellow, and they kind of followed them back. And that little green lizard represents Napoleon. And at first Napoleon wanted to flank him from the sides, but he realized that if he did that, they'd give him a chance to escape from the back of the town, so he just kind of went for a frontal attack. And the French only have 500 cannons, but the Russians had 600. But the French actually, their cannons were a lot more effective, so after like a long day of fighting, the armors on both sides got really exhausted. And eventually it just started to become like a cannonade, which is where the cannons are just firing back and forth, and it's kind of a stalemate. But eventually the Russians started to lose a lot more troops, and this one dude named Fyodor Bagration, who was the commander of the Second Army, got killed. And after that happened, the Russians kind of withdrew and surrendered. And when it was all said and done, the Russians lost 45,000 guys, and the French lost 30,000. So the French ended up winning pretty decisively. And then this allowed them to kind of move into Moscow unopposed. And they were there for a while, but eventually they just kind of got drove out by the Russians again, so it didn't last, but that's about it, I suppose.
What's this do for his legacy? Because here's a question. Can you win a giant battle but still lose the war?
Yes.
You sure can.
How is that possible?
Well, they won the Battle of Borodino, and that little move into Moscow, which is all well and good, but after a while the Russians just kicked him out again, so like I said, it didn't last very long. And they ended up losing in the end. Any questions? Or
How many men did the Russians lose again?
that was 45,000. They started out with 120,000, and the French had 130,000, so they had the numbers on their side too.
So Napoleon takes an army of almost 800,000 dudes and lots of good horses into Russia. What's going to kill most of them?
The cold.
The weather. So the best thing that the Russians have going for them, it's not their army or their cannons or their leaders, it's their what? Their geography. Russia is a huge country, and the further you get into Russia, the longer it's going to take you to get out, right? So the Russians slowly retreat, and even though you're on the suburbs of their capital city, they're going to say, keep coming in, it's September. Pretty soon, it's going to get cold and snow, and everyone's going to die. So of his 800,000 men roughly he brought, about 600,000 of them are going to die. Most of them from malnutrition and weather and harassment, because the Russians just follow him all the way back and take pot shots at him. So he lost his little army in Egypt because they lost their ride home. He loses the biggest army in the history of the world because of Russian geography. Was that kind of arrogant to think you could conquer Russia,
Yeah,
especially in
probably.
September?
Just flying a bit too
Because
close
the
to
Russians
sun.
keep retreating, pretty soon it's November, and you're over 1,000 miles away from Europe. Like, you're way, way deep into Russia. You're never going to get out. It's like a black hole. You can go in, but you're never going to come out alive. Right, Tim?
My grandpa get out alive.
He was one of the lucky ones then.
Yeah, then you get bullet, hold grenade, and blow it out.
Okay. Questions about his legacy. This is the biggest artillery battle in the history of the world, and I'll show you a sweet song tomorrow that was written about it. It's classical music, but you all know it, even if you like hard rock. Okay? Alright, let's give the Battle of Borodino 3. Ready? Okay, I don't think we're going to have time for Leipzig. So Leipzig